Now, from high atop his desk, get ready to peel it all back and get to the root of the subject. No pun intended. With Paul K. on Wine Talks, where he takes no prisoners and calls it the way he sees it.
Hey, welcome to Wine Talks with Paul K. And we are on location today in Beverly Hills. We'll get to the introductions in just a second. Wine Talks is, of course, available on Spotify, Pandora, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Apple Play, wherever you hang out for your podcast, and always sponsored by the original Wine of the Month Club, where you can get Bordeaux series, Napa series, and the Sweet series. But we are, I'm going to call this graced with the presence of wine retail royalty. How's that sound, Dennis?
Paul, let me start off by saying what an absolute delight it is to spend a little bit of time with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for taking the invitation. And we tried to do this on Zoom, and we both decided that it deserved, in-person conversation, and some laughs and some talks about the old days and some conversations.
And there's absolute magic of being next to you here.
Oh, yeah.
Within that, it's like trying to talk. I don't know how you talk about wine without participating and consuming it.
You're right. And this is a good point.
I hate reading tasting notes. I wanted to be there tasting and having that magic.
I think that's a really good place to start. Besides being the 5-star, the best wine retailer in the United States in 2006 and all the things we're going to talk about the past, but tasting wine live and the communication that's required and the relationship that's built makes wine different than any other beverage. But you have a story.
It's magical.
It's magical.
It's magical.
Right?
I mean, yeah, you feel it, and I mean, it's honestly, there's personality-wise in history and all that. No one greater than Jesus Christ, and he had a choice.
That's true.
He could have turned water into Coca-Cola, and we'd be going to Atlanta, or pineapple juice, and we'd be going to Hawaii, but wine.
Your wisdom is
magic.
off the charts. I got to tell you that because I've never
just magical. So you've got to love that.
Well, I have to tell you something. I calculated for my old pastor in Sierra Madre the amount of people. I don't know. What do you guys use here for a formula? If somebody says, Dennis, I'm getting married tomorrow, how much wine do I need for 100 people? What's your formula? Do you remember?
Well, I size up their pocketbook and then,
yeah.
And I kind of judge that because I'm in a cult business.
How much you got?
Yes. Let's see if that Black American Express card, we can really kind of do something with it here.
Well, all right, I'll let me back up a little bit. I use 4 people to a bottle.
Okay.
So if you use that calculation.
But if you had a lot better wine, I'm going to assure you right now, we've already quaffed away a bottle of
that's true,
Krug here
2 people.
For 2.
Yeah.
And so can you imagine if it was a celebration that was going to last?
That's funny because my daughter got married 3 weeks ago. I poured a Louis Jadot Bon Franche.
Very nice wine.
Great wine for a wedding, right?
I mean, you must have been very anxious to see someone else take responsibility for her.
Yes,
that was a celebration.
We were happy.
You brought out something to say, please, and understand that she's very spoiled.
We have it. And not only that, the Bordeaux was the Le Pagod de Casse, the second label of Casse d'Esternel. So
very nice wine.
It doubled the consumption that I usually would tell people to provide. So maybe you're right.
Throw that out the window. No, I'm only right with a matter of finances.
With the right. So that's what we pour.
No sense in emptying your cellar when you can drink someone else's.
That's right. Well, no, but don't you know? I mean, that when somebody's coming to the wine guy's house, and there's many wine guys like us around, now I don't have near the experience you have, but they expect something pretty interesting, don't they?
Of course. You know exactly. And the camaraderie strip just kind of pushes them right off over the edge.
So what is it about? And I there's no answer to this question because you said it already. Jesus could have turned the pineapple juice into Coca-Cola, whatever wasn't even around then.
You take responsibility for that. I do not. I happen to speak candidly. Now that's yours. It's like your dollar. Well, okay. That is landed, and you're laughing. You take responsibility for that.
I'll say this. But what is it about wine? You said the bubbles go up in champagne, which I agree with you. This is a fascinating beverage, and I've made it part of my regular routine recently. But what is it about wine? What is it about the earth? What is it about what wine represents that is different than all the other things that we can drink? It's
more than magical. It's almost a religious type experience because it's something that you want to share. And it's more than mythical. It is something, a grape was a grape, but then it does have a rebirth into something that is very, very special. And it elevates to a higher level. And I cannot really, for my knowledge and profession, think of when you are talking to most people that are producing wine that they don't wish to really elevate it to the very highest that it can be. And it's a challenge with nature and everything else. And my God, I cannot imagine going somewhere and sitting down to someone that I don't even know and they have a Coca-Cola and me having a Coca-Cola and wanting to say, oh, I want you to try my Coca-Cola. I mean, wine says, point. Look at, boy, you got to really try this wine. And it's a complete stranger. And usually it's an attractive woman for my sake.
Well, good.
I would like you to try this. And it makes it a great introduction to...
it sort of breaks down all
barriers
and emotional resistance.
And transcends all sorts of lines of occupations. You can be talking to someone that could be a rocket scientist, and they will be fascinated.
That's right.
Or you can talk to someone that is a simple farmer, and they will. And I don't mean simple because farming isn't that simple. You got to work with nature
but the
and
culture
God,
of farming is different than urban living, right? Let's just say that.
But still, it is something that you wish to share. I cannot imagine wanting to share a Coke or a glass of pineapple juice.
See, I've been saying that. The listeners are probably tired of hearing it, but you drink Jack Daniels because it tastes like Jack Daniels. There's nothing different between the Jack Daniels I'm having and you're having.
Correct.
But if you and I go to a wine bar or we go to a restaurant and you order a Bordeaux and I order a Burgundy, we're going to have a different experience, and we want to share that. Yes. And so I've yet to been able to identify what the grape does, what it brings to the table, and there's really just sort of theories as to why it's so special, but it does create, and I'll be honest, there's a cartoon I have in my office, and it was drawn from my father. We're going to get into the old days in a second. And it's the Revolutionary times. There's a guy standing in front of the bar. He's the guard, and up comes Jefferson. He denies him entry. Up comes George Washington, denies him entry. Up comes one of the other, John Adams, denies him entry. And then Willie the wine merchant comes up. He goes, right on, Willie, come on in. Any of you guys got ID? So the wine guy was always welcome to the party.
Yes.
And you and I have this probably experience every day almost when we had a dinner party or the conversation, the one root conversation, the one, it's not political. It doesn't deal with sexism. It doesn't deal with racism. It doesn't deal with any of those issues that we have today on the political table. But wine transcends all that. And we have this wonderful conversation about wine. What's the history? Tell me about this wine. What's with this grape? Where's it grown? All the stories we have. And doesn't that come from experience? Does it come from just the years?
I think it's a quest for something. I wanted to write about wine at one point, and I did a couple of books. And at some point, I came across a line from a Shakespearean play. And I said, I just give up right now because I'm going to paraphrase, but it was that you're given a goblet of water and you see a reflection of your face. You're given a goblet of wine, and you get a reflection of your soul.
Wow.
So I said, I quit.
You can't.
I quit. What's said there, I will never try to.
What time do we
attempt.
open the store? That's all I'm the merchant.
That's it. I'm very happy now to go ahead and peddle the best that I can find.
I guess we just can't do better than some of the great playwrights of the world, right?
Yes.
So
you got it there, Paul.
Let's go back to 1969, where, this is a brilliant idea. We're in Beverly Hills. You have this idea to open a retail store. What was your interest in wine prior to that, and what made you think that this was a good idea? Or was it a bad idea?
The truth of the lie, because the lie is going to be a lot more interesting.
All right, let's go with the lie then.
Well, somehow there was a war going on called Vietnam, and I just didn't feel very comfortable at trying to protect myself with a gun. So I decided that, since I'm not doing very well in college and my grades are failing, that meant I was going to be eligible. Mm-hmm. And the only way to really save myself was to find a woman that could produce children very quickly. So I said, that's not a good idea either. And so I took a summer job with Park Burnett. It was a little auction house over here in Los Angeles, and they were bought out by a company called Sotheby's.
Wow.
And I said, I was very happy there at Park Burnett because I thought, okay, I'm going to make some money. Mm-hmm. And they said, well, how would you like to go to London? And I thought, geez, I'm going to be I don't have to go to Canada.
What?
I'll go.
That's an automatic pass.
This part is true. I was put in a department so that we would sell at auction rare guns, because the thought was that Americans are in love with guns. And they put me there, and I thought, geez, this is what I wanted to get away from.
Wow.
And I had hair at the time, very long.
Yeah.
And
I made
I mucked that up real quick and made a lot of fuss. And they brought me into the main office, and as coincidence would be, the person that was running Sotheby's was Lord Westmoreland. And we had a general at the very same time in charge of that war in Vietnam called General Westmoreland. I thought, oh my God. How could this possibly have happened? And I knew I was fired.
Yeah.
And he was telling me to just plan on packing up and going back to the United States. And he brought out he had one of the butlers bring out a port, and he poured the glass of port for myself and then himself, and then he was going to let me know that's it. And as he put it to sip it, it started running down his left jaw, and I started to laugh at him, and then all of a sudden, I don't know what happened, I kindly got up, and with my napkin, I touched it, and I didn't realize he was half paralyzed.
Wow.
But he was in charge. And he was sweet enough to say, well, maybe you're in the wrong department. We'll put you in the wine department, and put me in the wine department with a master of wine at that time. His name was Colin Fenton. And that was my introduction to wine.
What a story.
And so with that, like yourself, and as you have done with your broadcast, Paul, such a fascinating history with wine.
That's amazing.
And so I got totally wrapped up into that, and I thought, geez, I like this. And then when I came back to the States, I wanted to open up a little store, but had not really two nickels to rub together, but kind of talked my way into it, and was fortunate enough to have Dan Rowan and Dick Martin come in and said, well, we met you at Sotheby's. What are you doing
The
here?
famed Roman Martin
Roman
Laugh-In.
Laugh-In. And I said I would do a tasting for Dan Rowan at his home, and at that occasion, there was a group of people that were getting into wine, like Henry Singleton, who had started and was running Teledyne, was responsible for us getting to the moon, and had at that time I thought $1 zillion, and I very blatantly, I don't know where the nerve came from, said, well, guys, this should be an organization so that your little group should be able to buy wine at wholesale and be able to get the very best. And I should head that up. And, of course, it very quickly turned into, well, why don't you open up a beautiful shop here in Beverly Hills?
Wow.
In which I said I would do it, but having to be a little arrogant and throw out conditions.
Oh, I wouldn't say arrogant.
I turned around and said, well, look, it's going to take a lot of money. And they said, well, we don't have a problem with that. And I said, well, listen, I know everyone has a problem when they're losing.
Eventually they'll have a problem.
Yeah. Everyone loves Vegas up to the point.
Easy to say.
And they said, okay. And I said, well, and if it should be successful, I want to be able to buy you out within, if I have an option, I'd be able to buy you out within 5 years, just because I want them to think that I would try very hard.
Sure, right.
But it turned out to be true.
You bought them out.
We were very successful, and I can go on and tell stories about that, because the first year that, first Christmas we were opened, I remember we had so much business from so many celebrities. And one celebrity in particular had just got a new comedy show, and he was Bob Newhart.
Wow.
And he came and he says, look, I have 300 gifts to go out, and there's the A group and the B group, and the A group at the time was $1,000 a package, and the B group was $500.
You're talking about 70-something?
This was just 70.
Yeah.
Just 1970. And I said, I'm sorry, you're going to have to take your business somewhere else. Down the street, there's something called Von Dome, and a little further down is Steve Wallace. He had just started Wally's, and I said, you have to take it there. And he says, no. I want you to have the business. And he says, what did my wife say on the card? And it says, Happy Holidays. And he says, well, can you cross out holidays and put Easter, and then can you handle it?
Wow.
And so the gist of this story is that was a different time, when clients were very loyal, and they wanted only to do business with someone that they knew, like your father.
Loyalty in the wine, I think, first of all, that's a fascinating story, and I want to hear more, particularly the one about Dinah Shore. But how much has changed with the internet and Groupon and the coupons and you established clientele immediately on a very high level of respect for you and the things. I mean, just looking at the inventory here that we're sitting in this beautiful shop. I mean, this is the premium inventory of the world, and they must have trusted you greatly to provide the caliber of wine that their recipients of a gift. $1,000 a bottle in 1970 was come on, that's a lot. How many wines were there like that? But they must have trusted you inherently to provide the level of service and quality that their recipients would expect from Bob Newhart or Roman or Dick Roman.
As I wish I could say it was for moi.
For moi.
But to put it doesn't take too long, even for those of us that are not that smart, to kind of recognize that birds of a feather will flock together, and I decided to select only the very best. And I mean, I feel it's a very, very special pleasure every day I walk past all of these first growths. I'm humbled.
Yes.
I am humbled by the
true.
fact that the owners, or should I call them the owners, the curators of that precious land, have been able to maintain a standard over hundreds of years, and that shows a very,
There's
very
something
respect.
There's something ethereal about that. There's something that validates what we do at its highest level. And I'm going to go back to like those days when my dad opened Palace Trees Wines and Spirits. I bought it in 1968 or 69, about the same time you started.
Oh, can I ask you real quick? Is he still with us?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, he's 92,
God.
and
And he's still working.
He still criticizes some of my selections. Yes, but if you call that,
Don't say criticize him. Respect. He's got some wisdom with all those years.
That's true.
He recognized some things that made a lot of sense.
Actually, I will tell you that he reads what I write or one of the newsletters, and he'll call me and say, "Look, that was great," or "That was. I think you got to mention this. You got to talk about this." And you know, what you're saying is so important. Because his comments today, at 92 years old, having gone through the renaissance of California wine in the 70s and all through that, are right on today. In the realm of the wines that you see here. In other words, we're not talking about Groupon wines, $3, 15 wines for $45. We're not talking about that stuff. We're talking about the real things, the quality wines that are hundreds of years of tradition. His comments are right on today. And that means something to me because through all the millennials and all the things that happen in the world of beverages, and now they're drinking seltzers and flavored this and flavored that, the stability of these things exists still because of those stories and that history. So back then, and I was talking to Bruce Nyers, I'm sure you know Bruce.
Yes.
And we were talking, he says, well, I would load up my station wagon when I was a sales manager for Joseph Phelps, and this is what the sales manager did. He would load a station wagon full of wine, drive down to L.A. He'd stop at the Beverly Hills Wine Merchant. He'd stop at PV Wines and Spirits, the Duke of Bourbon, Wally's old location, and maybe one other wine. And that was the sales calls. That's a lot different than it was today.
No, but we bought everything.
You bought everything he had,
So-
right? He had to
yes.
leave with an empty station wagon, right? That was his job.
Yes. But there's probably only 3 dozen or 4 dozen wineries then.
At that time in Napa.
Yes.
So along comes, and by the way, I wanted to make sure you said this. Port, since it was your springboard into the wine business, and what a generous gesture by Westmoreland to do that for you, is the same beverage that Stephen Spurrier that piqued his interest in getting into this industry. Was a glass of Croft. I think it was 18 something.
You're kidding. I did not know that.
Yeah, that's the thing that spun him into I'm going to do this for a career. So that's I think that's interesting in itself. But
I ran into Stephen a few times, but I never really knew him other than just passing and
I had him on the show.
Well, that was special.
I wish I had read his book prior, because we talked about the Judgment of Paris. We had plenty to talk about. There's lots of things going on. But his story in his book, A World of Wine or A Life in Wine, I wish this is the first chapter. We could have spoken for an hour, because it's about what you're talking about. It's about the passion of wine and how you acquire it. It doesn't happen overnight. You learned it through Sotheby's, and then you came back and people respected you for what you knew. And that's what wine's about, in my opinion.
It's a continuing journey.
Yeah, you never know enough, right?
And you never. There's always, to me, thank God of the corkscrew. There's always another wine that you certainly want to try.
Yeah, exactly. So tell me, let's talk about that for a second. The clientele you had back in those days is the same style and probably caliber, let's call it, of clientele. And when you and I, we'll talk about the industry now with the internet and all that stuff in a minute, but I lost my train of thought. See, I'm not as young as you think. I'm not as young as I think I am. Look,
I think it's you sipping on the crew.
So, which is wonderful.
It wants more attention than your thought.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I appreciate it, because it does make you wander, doesn't it? The clientele in those days, is it the same as today, generally, for you?
No, it's. I would say that it's completely changed. But as the old adage goes, the more it changes, the more it remains the same. Yes, it's in one time a celebrity clientele. They had money and they had curiosity, just like sports figures today. But today, I think they have gatekeepers that have an attitude that anything they do means they have to be reimbursed because it's an endorsement. Whereas at a different point in time, anything that a celebrity client did, the public wanted to sort of mimic, and they attached that celebrity was one that was seeking to improve themselves with further knowledge, versus that's
an important.
It's a different
comment.
attitude.
It's a very important comment, and my listeners are probably tired of hearing the
Geez,
story.
I don't know. Did I say that, or did I read it off the teleprompter?
yeah, let me look around. No, because today's proliferation, and you've seen them 1,000 times, and I think it's so important for the wine consumer. And I was going to talk about this anyway, about what you'd recommend to a young wine consumer who wants to understand it, who wants to study it. And I've always said, you can study it as long as you want. You've been doing it for 40 years, 50 years. You've been studying this, and you still don't know everything you want to know. And that's the beauty of the subject. And I any client of mine that wants to learn, they've got plenty of resources. I'm not going to force them into it, and they can stop wherever they want to stop. But they're barraged by these celebrity wines now. Now, you're talking about back in the day, if Bob Newhart was ordering these kinds of wines, you could say Bob Newhart ordered this Latour, and this is for his guests, and everybody's happy, and they're, oh, Bob Newhart liked it. But now they're endorsing and putting wines on the shelf. Snoop Dogg, for one, Cali Red. And the importance of a shop like yours, and I'm going to say like a business like mine, where I taste everything that comes through here, I understand what comes through here, and I'm only going to recommend the things that I think are valuable to the palate. Okay, to the consumer based on the price. But if you go to the market today and you look at the best part of the shelf at Ralph's or Vaughn's and it says Snoop Dogg's Cali Red, a consumer that doesn't know any better is going to be like, oh, it's Snoop Dogg's wine.
Yes.
And you take it home and it's sugared up, whatever, right?
Yes.
And it ends up on the bottom shelf. And here's a store like the Beverly Hills Wine Merchant. What is it? The Beverly Hills Wine Merchant, the Merchant of Beverly the Wine Merchant of Beverly Hills.
Whichever way
you want to go. Okay, good.
Wherever you want to put Beverly Hills, you can put Beverly Hills in front or behind, but the wine merchant is the wine merchant.
So you stand by this inventory, and I'm looking around going, wow, what inventory? And I think it's so important for a wine consumer who wants to learn and wants to understand and wants to sort of figure out this ethereal value of the drink you're talking about, needs somebody like you to say, I've tasted all this. These are the good ones. These are the ones that represent either history or pedigree or value or whatever it is that the customer's seeking. You're recommending that, and that gets lost on the internet. It gets lost with coupons. It gets lost with Groupon. It gets lost with the fact that I can buy an ad on Google for whatever I want to buy it for. And it seems to me that your clientele's like, Dennis, what do you think of this?
Well, Paul, I'd like to say this. I wish I could say that was the exact truth, but sometimes with a good proportion of my clientele that is coming in and seeking the very best, their knowledge is already there. And sometimes I am pressed to try to keep up with the knowledge of my clientele. And I love that because
that's amazing.
That lends myself to be able to sit down and pull the cork on the bottle and be able to have a real conversation. And I am absolutely astonished at the knowledge many of my clients know about.
That's fascinating.
Wine.
So what do you do?
I mean,
do you go back to the books?
Well, they will make me go back and re-verify a lot of things that have been discussed there. It was just like I was just up in Napa, as I was telling you before we started today, and going through Promontory, the property that Bill Harlan did with, and seeing the cask that they're all of a sudden now using old German cask.
Really?
That old oval, big shape.
Sure.
That I remember Brother
Redwood?
Timothy.
Oak or redwood?
It's oak, but Brother Timothy used to do the redwood at that old Greystone thing, and walking through and saying, and I haven't seen anything like that in 50 years. And I see that but I mean, it's the challenge of people coming back and telling you things, and then all of a sudden, I'm curious. I got to go there and take a look.
No, that's fascinating
and so I do find that a lot of people that really, anyone that has more than 12 bottles of wine, to me, is a collector. Period. If you have 12 bottles of Jack Daniels, you're an alcoholic.
But 12 bottles of wine, you're a
bottles
collector.
Of wine, I defy you.
I like
define
that.
you as a collector.
I'm going to plagiarize that one too.
So,
but that's
what I see.
But that's an important thing because we were in Beaujolais. We visited Chateau de Jacques, and he's using brand new concrete eggs. The eggs have been around forever,
right?
But they're coming in vogue. In fact, at Krug and Napa, they're boasting the fact that they're experimenting with eggs. How about below ground amphora in Georgia? I mean, places like this, and all of a sudden, our clients are reading about this. They come to us and say, "Hey, I've read this story," and we're like, "Well, gee, I haven't read that yet. I can't read everything," and so we go explore to find out what this conversation is about.
This is what I find, and it's interesting cultures. I mean, different clients that come through. I am just so fascinated with every time that we're dealing with Japanese clients.
Yeah,
boy, are they ever! And I don't want to use the word they, but it seems culturally that there's an investigation because of a couple thousand years of
history.
They're very interested in the why.
Don't tell my dad I drink Japanese gin now because he'll have a fit.
Oh my goodness! Listen, I'm totally shocked at the Japanese scotches.
Yeah, the scotches are really popular.
The Yamasakis and things.
Yeah.
Wow, where did that come? 25 years? Come on, it can't be 25 years. You must have learned that from Rudy or something.
Yeah, they made it up.
Where did that number come from?
How did they learn that? You haven't had Scotch and barrel for 25 years. That's impossible. Who would know? But my dad's my dad grew up in Cairo, and it was an English protectorate then, and so he drank London dry gin, and I took him a bottle of this Japanese gin, which I think is very good. And he says, you can't drink that. You got to drink Gordon's, in the plastic 1.75. That's the only thing that's good.
So look, can I ask one thing real quick?
Sure.
Where did you develop your interest in wine? I love what you're doing right now. I'd rather be the interviewer than the interviewee.
Well, I appreciate the question. My aha moment, which yours was at Sotheby's with a glass of port, was not that long ago. It was probably 10 years ago where I started to realize, there's something very special about this, not just the business. I was a business guy. I grew up, I worked for Xerox, large corporation. I started a company with 5 other guys. We had nothing but a fishbowl of business cards and a 2-line phone. That's all we had. So I was business. And when Dad and I went to a Bordeaux tasting, you probably were there. It was probably 1988, and it was at the Beverly Center, the hotel. I forgot the name now. It's changed. Sofitel.
Okay.
It was 25 Bordeaux's. We got separated from the tasting. We were the last 2 into the door. And when we got in the car, we compared notes. And we have a very meatball surgery rating system. A 1, and I say this at disclosing to the vendors when they see me put my tasting notes in. A 1 means forget it.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah, it's either crap or it's just way overpriced. I'll never get them down. 2 is, you know what? The quality value relationship is pretty good and I could probably make a deal. And 3 is if the price came down, it would be worth, that price range. So he and I went through that list in the car, and we were, of the 25 Bordeaux's, we were only off on 2. So we thought, my dad goes, give me $1. I go, what do you mean give you $1? And that was a ceremonial transfer of the company, even though I did pay him later. Still pay him, actually. It was ceremonial transfer of the idea. And so my first 2 selections, now look at the risk value in this decision, yes, Dennis, were Sanford Pinot Noir and Heights Bella Oaks Cabernet. So,
okay. Okay.
So big risk on my part, right? But I've become more fascinated in the history and trying to peel back why it's such a unifying beverage for people and why the subject matter is so interesting. And there's no answer to the question. It's just to understand how it happened and the people that are in it. And what a great group.
Yes.
You know, the real farmer, right? You were talking
Right.
about Fresno.
Right.
The farmers are real people. Aren't winery
Right.
people, aren't they just farmers?
Yes, absolutely.
And when it comes down
But
to
they're
it,
gentlemen farmers because now it takes a lot more money.
well,
So you got to be a gentleman of some sort.
and that's the part that's kind of sad in my opinion. And I was talking, I think I told you about Mike Salacci at Opus. He says, 2018 Cabernet was like Oak Knoll or Rutherford Cabernet grapes, $8,000 a ton, which just to put a wine in the bottle, if you and I were to do it, is going to be $125. Forget the glass and the cork and the profit and the transportation. So
I forgot to ask Rita what we're charging for Opus.
yeah,
I think we're overcharging a little bit. I think we've got ourselves to like $300-400 for that bottle. So,
but the point of it is like the Monticello, the Corley family of Monticello.
Yes,
they bought that property in 1972. Right? They can make wine that we can afford to drink that's quality. Right? We can do that. The same with the German.
But didn't they also Monticello? You're bringing this up. Didn't they build a building there that was just like Monticello?
Yes, right. Yeah,
itself?
it's like Thomas Jefferson's Monticello.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
And he's Chris Corley's all over the world. But you can do that, right? Because the land was paid for 50 years ago.
Of course. I mean, that was when they were buying land by the square mile, not by the acre.
That's right. You and I'd have a hard time starting that. So let's fast forward. So you've got the store in 1969, and you've been around for a little bit, and you're obviously at that time. I think in Napa had 25 wineries in the 70s, and I think there's over 4,000 wineries in California now. And along comes 1976. And this obscure tasting in Rue de Madeleine at the Intercontinental Hotel in Paris happens. Mr. Spurrier, who we discussed a little bit, hosts this thing. And I want to talk to you about the impact it had on the Beverly Hills Wine Merchant. Did it affect you at all? And how long did it take for that effect to occur? Do you remember?
Well, I remember reading like a little blimp of space in page 48. That was when the LA Times was really
where people read
it. A huge newspaper, and I think there was a person by the name of Robert Balzer who was the
famed guy, yes,
the writer, and had a mentioning of this, and then the phone started to ring, and everyone wanted the Maddalena Chardonnay there, and then something about this Stag's Leap. And I was aware of them, but I wasn't ready for the impact.
Did you have them? Do you think you had them then?
No, and at that point, Paul, the store that I had built on Roxbury and Santa Monica here in Beverly Hills was... These are big blocks here, and underground was 2/3 of the block was I had, and I was almost a half a block for the store itself. So
that's a big store.
It was a big store, and it was a beautiful store, and I used my intimidating power that I
yes.
thought I had to say that if
I'm overwhelmed by that now.
That I had to have it, and both wineries were already being intimidated from around the country.
Really,
because what was this? A California Cabernet beating out first growths of France, and on top of it, the people that were judging it were not Californians; they were French, and so that made a big impact. Sort of the thing that was going to blow up the whole aristocracy and monarchy of France. That maybe we were overpaying for these French wines, and that California was here, and it created just this whole, I call it a revolution that happened. And with that, I think more than just bringing in the situation of attention to, or the flashlight to California. It brought on the great big spotlight, and money started to really happen at that point.
It's interesting because, my dad carried the Montalena stuff in this early 72. He had the 72 shard only because.
Well, he's a wise man.
No, yeah, and that's the main. He'll tell you that. But the main reason was the Barretts lived in Palos Verdes, and he said, I'm tired of the guests, people in Palos Verdes coming by for donations. Can you just carry my wines, Paul? And 72 being the first vintage of the Chardonnay, can you just carry my wine so I can send them to your store? So it really was a business decision because Mr. Barrett was like, I don't think he left his law practice till 1986. So it took 10 years for the industry to catch up to his, the volume.
He originally was from Palos Verdes.
Yeah, he was an attorney in Torrance.
Wow. And so was Kendo Jackson.
Yeah, that's right.
Jack.
Yeah.
I mean, all of these giants. And why Palos Verdes?
There
was only SeaWorld there, where you had porpoises with porpoises with tutus,
and I used to sneak into that place all the time.
Really? To look at the tutu,
which is now Terranea. And I didn't have a tutu on, but I did sneak in, and they would kick me out, and then I'd try to sneak in again. But what's interesting about those days because. The wine, I think the Montalena, my dad's book, I still have part of his book, was $6.49 a bottle. What are you talking now? It's $36 or $40 a bottle. The wine industry was different then. Did you have distilled spirits at the first store? Okay, so
we buried them because I didn't understand.
Yeah, but wait a minute. The Schallert guy would come,
yes.
Or the Bohemian guy would come.
Oh, boy, are you bringing back
right?
history.
Or the Western guy would come.
Yeah, it was all under one complex out in the valley somewhere.
And they'd say, oh, by the way, we have Mondavi put on the shelf, right?
Yes.
I'm selling you some Jack Daniels or some tequila, and I've got these other wines.
Well, remember, the only way that I know some of the listeners have heard of the brilliance of Mondavi and such, but the Robert Mondavi didn't have money and had to go to Rainier Ale to get money to finance.
Really? I didn't know that
thing. And then Rainier bailed on him in the mid 70s, and he was put in a huge crunch financially. So
this is 70. So Mondavi was a pretty going concern.
He was very going. He was a guy that was out there doing centrifuges and trying to make the wine as crystal clear as Listerine.
Yes, right.
And because that was the type of guy he was. There was nothing that he wouldn't try.
Yeah, he wouldn't try it.
He was almost a forerunner of organic wines because he was already paying attention to the stars and the moon out there.
Well, he probably had to look to the stars and the moon to figure something out.
There wasn't no other lights out there in Napa Valley at night at that time.
It's funny because I was speaking with Peter Mondavi. We were talking about, and he didn't know this story, and I actually researched this story. Maybe you don't, maybe you know it, you don't. But the first American wine ever poured at the White House was the 58 or 59 Krug, or the 56 Krug Special Select, and Peter Mondavi didn't know this. It's what piqued my dad's interest in 1958 when Queen Elizabeth came to the White House, and they poured it at lunch. And the first American president to ever pour American wine at a state dinner was Johnson, the next administration, and it happened to be the same wine. It was a 56 Krug or something in that range. I can't remember exactly. But it still took, 18 more years for California wine to have any prominence, and it took some kind of random. If you listen to Steven Spurrier, and I have Patricia Gallagher coming on the show soon. It wasn't supposed to be a tasting. It wasn't supposed to be a contest. He made it a contest at the last minute and told the French judges almost as they walked into the hotel, by the way, you're going to compare against. And what do they think? They're thinking, chocolate. Certainly, I can handle this. Right?
It's not a race.
Not a problem. Yeah. Right? And then the history occurred, and but here's an interesting woman. Maybe you know her. Her name is Joanne Dupuis. You ever heard of this woman? She's 93.
Okay.
She lives in Napa still. She was the woman they tapped And I only bring this up because you're talking about Brother Timothy. She was the woman they tapped to escort Stephen Spurrier around Napa Valley and skip the Mondavis and the Beulah vineyards to find little guys that were just making wine. And she sort of is responsible for the fact that Freemark Abbey was there, Montelena was there, Warren Winiarski was there with Stag's Leap. She's responsible for that. And she's still around. And she has this great little booklet. I'm going to get you a copy about what they call the rest of the story. And how
Paul, now you've got me addicted to listening to you. I'm finding out all these little
it's fun
gems
stuff.
of information that myself being in this business 55 years now, it's wow.
Isn't that fun stuff? Isn't that fun stuff? She's a character.
Wow. And she's 92?
She's 93. And she came up the stairs and we were at the hotel at the Neon Phil. We were staying at a hotel there and she sat down and she told story after story after story.
Wow.
And she's a character, but it's like this inside story about what really happened. Right. And Stephen's story is amazing anyway.
Speaking of the White House, probably you're not aware of this, that anyone that donates wine from a winery in the United States, they have to accept.
Really?
And so if you're in New Mexico or Texas and you're making a wine and you send 5 cases to them, they have to accept it. And it might end up at so many of the White House functions.
Wow.
Along the
what a great, I did not know that.
I mean, we're just throwing out little
we're throwing out little tidbits.
This
is what they want to hear.
And at this table here, I had this table made back in 1970, and we've had 3 presidents and yourself sit here and
really
talk about wine over
phenomenal.
This very
That's
same
phenomenal.
Table. So I'm very proud of this.
How
table.
far? How
so
far?
Now I have you, Paul, to kind of
yeah. Well, I appreciate the accolade.
Add in. No gum is underneath, so you can cross your leg and not worry.
You saw my hand go underneath there, looking for gum.
I wasn't sure. Just making sure that you.
That's amazing stuff. How would they end up here?
Well, Richard Nixon was the first because some people say the reason he got reelected in such a landslide was that he went on the Laugh-In show with my partners at the time and did the sock it to me and throw it through the water. And
that's right, sock it to me. Yeah.
And Dan Ron said, "Mr. President, you have to come and meet one of the very important people," or so. He said in front of me to the president at the time. Made me feel very honored. But
anyway, for sure, that's huge.
Anyway, so that was
before or after China.
I
think Stromsburg.
That would have probably been after because I knew Jack Davies very well.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, but part of that family had contributed. They were staunch Republicans.
Sure.
So that had something to do with it. And then Ronald Reagan, being in the neighborhood here in Beverly Hills, he was sort of a regular with his whole little kitchen cabinet type of a thing.
That's great.
And I'd be invited to go over to Century City at his office then. And then Bill Clinton. Now, I have this theory about great presidents or great leaders always have enjoyed a glass of wine. I've always been very suspicious of any leader that doesn't drink wine. And history has not been kind to those people, those presidents that haven't consumed wine, like Jimmy Carter and even Donald Trump. Haven't been kind to him. They should have lifted a glass of wine or so, and maybe the public perception, if they could have slurred a word or two.
They might have changed their people what they thought. If they'd been to the Beverly Hills Wine Merchant, at least. We should we should do some kind of analysis.
So here you are at the very same table.
This is really
with presidents.
Now
I got Paul here. So
that's all.
I'm going to say that
this is great.
This has been delightful and been a real honor having you sitting and chatting with me.
I appreciate
because no one else will ever chat with me about these, old folklore that.
Well, it's not. You know,
and pardon if I sound like I'm starting to stutter a little bit, but this is now on my third glass of bubbles, and there will probably be another one coming out here very shortly. So
let's. Actually, we're coming on. I think we're coming on an hour now, right? So we'll wrap it up. But I do want to get a little contemporary and talk about the internet. You and your group, and I know that you will say that it's not you, but we have to survive. This product is a great product, and it has such value to everybody, but the competition is huge, and the amount of people that come through the doors is different because there's internet stuff and all that things. And you've done an amazing job digitally to produce a newsletter every day, to highlight certain wines, to tell the stories. And I think telling the stories is so critical, particularly now. And this is what I'm going to ask you. I was tasked. I'm going to say I was tasked. Maybe that's a stretch in what Mr. Spurrier told me on the phone, but do you remember Les Amis de Vin?
Of course I do.
Okay.
It was the powerhouse throughout the country. I mean, Les Amis du Vin, when they'd get together, they would have as many as 1,000 people show up at some of the events. The Friends of Wine run out of Washington, D.C.
I'm bringing it back.
You are. Well,
bring it back.
Congratulations. So as we started off, more things changed, the more they remained the same. It's something that was really missed because it created a real camaraderie. It brought out speakers that people would never in different communities ever have a chance to hear and really be able to shake the hand.
We're doing it, and you're going to be.
Congratulations!
You're going to be the honorary chairman. I didn't know if you know that or not.
I did not know. I'm not one that volunteers for much.
I'll bust you down as a board member.
Usually, then they'll say, "Well, we're going to give you a plaque, and we're going to have a dinner, and bring out your 100 best friends. And by the way, tell them they got to write a check for 10,000 each."
All right. Well, this is supposed to be. I actually brought this up.
I better have another drink.
You better pour yourself a little more. I'm teasing you the extent of you being the chairman, but I am bringing it back. I spent my whole plane ride home from New York the other day on brainstorming what Les Amis de Vin. I actually have the trademark now, and what it means.
You do? Well, congratulations. Here's a toast.
Cheers.
And I mean, as anyone that has an opportunity, not just because right now this will be very, very wonderful for anyone that appreciates anything about wine.
We got to tell these stories. I got to tell your story. I got to tell all the story. It's not a profit thing.
But the old Les Amis de Vin used to have a membership fee, and it used to have, and you kind of felt very privileged to be part of it. And there was a newsletter that would come out and inform you of what was really going on. And at the time was incredibly cutting edge. And I think with the whole wine community, especially the amateur that really loves wine, really they need a filter.
That's
rather
it.
than
I like
what
that.
is
Write that down because that's a word. It's a great word. Filter.
Blast it out, because opinions that are just spoken off of a drink or two, or that's all they are. They're just opinions. There should be a filter that gets it right. I think the filter is
a great term to tell the stories here. Okay, I'm going to wrap up with this. I told you I was going to do this. And so here's a book by Dr. Murray. He was a French MD, licensed MD. He's also an herbologist, so to speak. And he wrote this book. It was written in French. It was translated in 1974 to English. And it says that in vino curitas, right? In wine is cure. And it's all about why wine is the best medicine. And I have not been able to find the book since, but I found it in my dad's library. And so he goes through a list of things like allergies, asthma, bronchitis, fever, gout, hypertension, and gives you a prescription depending on the wine and a dosage. Okay, so I'm going to give you an ailment and 3 choices of what the cure could be in the wine world. Okay, now I have to tell you, this is for fun. Okay, because only one person's got it right.
Okay,
so far of the same question, and that was Emmanuel Camigi, the master somm, as you probably know. So the ailment is flatulence. Not that you'd be familiar with this problem, but
No, I'm not going there.
and the choices are going to be.
I have too good of a time.
So
No regrets.
the choices are going to be a Santamillion champagne or a glass of dry Alsatian white. And this is going to be, and I'm going to ask you the dosage after that, but to help yourself cure flatulence is Santamillion champagne or dry Alsatian white.
Boy, I would, you know, I'm a blender. I'd like to take all three.
Okay. Well, you can't.
Don't give me that can.
You can do
it's
it.
Impossible.
No.
It's impossible.
I mean, you can't.
I probably could start off with the champagne and have the Alsatian one, and then go to the Saint Million, and I think I'd be cured.
Okay, so about halfway through, you'd be cured because it's according to Dr. Murray, the dry Alsatian white with its mineral content would help you with your flatulence, and the dosage is half a bottle a day. You think that's enough?
Not for us.
Not for,
we have a
we just finished the whole bottle of Krug,
we have
right?
a very, very serious case.
So, you know, we could talk forever, Dennis. And
in champagne, why I like champagne again, and now I'm telling you as it was told to me. So I'm not going to endorse the reference, but I was always told that in a glass of champagne there is every mineral and vitamin that you need. So rather than taking all those pills, you take a glass of champagne in the morning, not only will you fulfill all those requirements, but you're going to be of happier demeanor.
Yes,
for sure. With that. And there's one thing that is missing, but you could add, and that's vitamin C. So you could add a little orange juice and have your mimosa.
Yeah, and have your mimosa.
So there we are.
Well, you know, we went to the Sedona last weekend, and because we fly on it's called Jet Suite X. It's amazing,
like a private jet.
You
are so spoiled.
No, but it's a public. I'm not going to get into that. It's a public charter. It's really great. So you can just put wine in your suitcase. And,
okay, they let you on.
Yeah, no problem. So I knew my friends would take Bordeaux and Cabernet, which is fine. They can take.
You have very nice friends.
Yes, but I brought Bride Valley Sparkling Brut because I knew they wouldn't drink it because they don't drink champagne. So I got the whole bottle to myself. See, it was very selfish. And I love
folks,
his wine.
You're listening to Paul, who's a very knowledgeable and wise man.
I'm like, oh, you don't want any Bride Valley Brut Rosé? Okay, I'm sorry. I'll have to drink the whole thing myself. Okay,
well, again, Paul, can I just say it's been an absolute delight for me.
My pleasure.
To be able to sit back and chat with you and learn so much.
My pleasure. I hope we can do it again. Hope we can do it soon. And if you're ever, don't know if you ever get to the San Gabriel Valley, but when you do, we have a
I'm a flat earth person, so be careful.
All right.
I think I fall off if I go north of Ventura and south of Olympic. So
thank you for the time today, and thanks for sharing your wisdom and sharing the store with us this morning. It's a pleasure to come out and see you. Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Wine Talks with Paul Kalamkarian. Don't forget to subscribe because there's more great interviews on their way. And of course, all these podcasts are sponsored by the Original Wine of the Month Club, 48 years in business. Don't forget to visit our website, wineofthemonthclub.com. Folks, have a great time out there in the wine world. Cheers.